The tray slid through the slot and hit the steel shelf with a dull clang. No heat, no smell of real food, just a gray lump soaking into bread that was already wet, and a spoonful of something green that didn't look alive or dead. The man who picked it up had tattoos crawling up his arms and across his neck, ink earned over years inside. He stared at the meal, then at the officer walking away. Around him, the cell block went quiet. Nobody joked. Nobody traded bites. Because an hour earlier, an inmate in the next unit had been dragged out on a stretcher after eating the same thing. Official word said stomach illness. But every man in that block knew the truth was sitting right there on the tray. If this was dinner, what exactly were they being fed, and why was nobody stopping it? The first week at North Ridge Correctional didn't feel dangerous. Loud, yes. Cold, always. But predictable. Men learned the rhythm fast. Doors. Count. Chow. Yard. Back inside. Food was part of that rhythm. Nobody expected quality. You expected consistency. A bologna sandwich that tasted the same every day. Powdered eggs that stuck to the tray. A dinner that never surprised you. In prison, surprises were usually bad. North Ridge sat off a long stretch of highway in the United States, a place most people passed without noticing. Inside were men from different backgrounds, locals, transfers from other states, a few detainees with British and Canadian accents waiting on paperwork. Their bodies told their stories before their mouths did. Tattoos everywhere. Sleeves of faded ink. Names crossed out. Dates half-covered. Symbols earned the hard way. Food was the one thing that kept them steady. That changed quietly. It started in the kitchen. Inmates assigned to food service noticed the trucks coming in lighter than before. Fewer boxes. Different brands. Some without labels at all. The meat arrived frozen, so hard it rang when dropped. The vegetables came soft, already bruised. When one inmate with a serpent tattoo wrapping his forearm asked the civilian supervisor about it, the answer was sharp and short. Don't ask questions. Just cook. Cooking didn't fix it. It made it worse. The first dinner after the change confused people. The portions were smaller. The color was off. The smell didn't match the menu posted on the wall. Men poked at their trays, shrugged, and ate anyway. Hunger makes decisions easy. By morning, a few were bent over toilets. Guards called it flu season. Medical handed out antacids. The next week, it happened again. A man named Reggie, covered in old prison ink and known for never wasting food, pushed his tray away untouched. He had done time in other facilities. Federal, state, private. This ain't right, he said quietly. Others laughed him off. By that night, Reggie was curled on his bunk, sweating through his sheet, shaking so hard his cellmate had to bang on the door. Still, nothing officially changed. Chow lines kept moving. Trays kept sliding. Men started watching each other more than the officers. Who ate fast? Who stopped halfway? Who got sick? Patterns formed. The same meals led to the same pain. The same nights ended with the same sounds echoing down the tier. Commissary became survival. Noodles. Crackers. Anything sealed. Prices went up. Fights broke out over soups and tuna packs. Tattoos stretched tighter as weight dropped. A British detainee named Lewis, his hands covered in thick block-letter ink, stopped eating prison food completely. They don't feed animals like this back home, he muttered. At least not legally. Rumors moved faster than truth. Some said the prison lost its food contract and took the cheapest bidder. Others said expired supplies were being relabeled. A few whispered about chemical cleaners getting mixed into meals by accident. Or not by accident at all. Nobody knew. Nobody explained. Then a man collapsed during count. He wasn't young. He wasn't weak. His arms were covered in military tattoos from before prison, lines and eagles faded by time. He took 2 steps, grabbed the rail, and went down hard. Officers rushed in. Radios screamed. Medics came fast. The doors stayed locked. That night, dinner was cold cereal. Administration released a statement the next morning. Temporary food supply issue. No ongoing risk. Men read it off a bulletin board while holding trays of milk already past date. Laughter spread, sharp and bitter. Trust didn't exist anymore. Every bite felt like a gamble. One inmate paid closer attention than most. His name was Marcus. Tattoos covered his chest and arms, thick lines and heavy shading from years inside. He didn't talk much. He watched. He noticed that when inspections were rumored, the food looked better. When nobody important was coming, it went back to gray and wet. Marcus stopped eating dinner. He wrapped small portions in plastic and hid them under his mattress. Meat, bread, vegetables. He didn't say why. He just waited. By the end of the month, medical visits doubled. Dehydration, severe cramps, weight loss. Guards started wearing gloves during Trey's service. That didn't go unnoticed. One evening, Trey's came back worse than ever. Pale meat floating in water. Bread already falling apart. A sour smell hung in the air. Men froze. No one wanted to be first. Across the tier, someone took a bite. 10 minutes later, the block exploded into noise. And that was the moment everyone realized this wasn't neglect anymore. It was something else entirely. The shouting brought officers running, boots slamming against concrete, radios crackling all at once. The man who had taken the bite was on his knees now, retching onto the floor, his tattooed hands shaking so badly he couldn't hold himself up. Someone yelled for medical. Someone else started pounding a door. The smell of sour food mixed with fear filled the block. Then came the lockdown order. Doors slammed shut, sealing everyone inside with their thoughts and their trays. The stretcher came late. It always did. The officers moved fast, but their faces were tight, careful, like they were walking through something fragile. When they rolled the man out, his eyes were open but empty, staring at the ceiling lights as they passed. The tray sat untouched on the shelf, the same gray food cooling in silence. After that, everything slowed down. For 2 days, the prison ran quiet. No yard, no programs. Meals were stripped down to sealed items: crackers, peanut butter, apples that looked better than anything they had seen in weeks. Men ate cautiously, like animals testing new ground. The sickness eased, but the anger didn't. It just sank deeper. In the calm, people talked. Stories came out from other facilities. A guy from another state prison said the same thing had happened there after a food contract changed. A Canadian detainee mentioned a scandal back home where suppliers dumped rejected meat into institutional kitchens. A man with heavy script tattoos across his shoulders swore he'd seen bleach barrels stored too close to food prep. Each story stacked on the next until they all felt connected. Marcus listened more than he spoke. He stayed on his bunk, calm on the surface, eyes moving. He checked his hidden samples every night. The bread grew spots. The meat smelled sharper. He wrapped them tighter. He waited. When chow resumed, it looked better. Hot meals again. Cleaner trays. Fresh fruit. Officers relaxed. Some inmates gave in and ate, hunger beating caution. Others watched the first bite like a test run. Nothing happened that night. Or the next. That was the trick. A week passed. Then 2. Weight stabilized. Complaints dropped. The prison felt like it had fixed the problem. Administrators smiled during walkthroughs. A local U.S. paper ran a short follow-up saying conditions had returned to normal. Families stopped calling. The pressure eased. Inside, the food slowly changed back. Not all at once. Just enough that if you weren't looking, you'd miss it. Portions shrank. Smells dulled. That green scoop returned. Men noticed but hesitated. Nobody wanted another lockdown. Nobody wanted to be the reason. Marcus finally moved. During a legal visit, he slid a sealed bag across the table to his public defender. No speech. Just a look. The lawyer's face tightened. She took it without asking questions. Days later, word reached the block in pieces. Lab tests. Bacteria levels. Chemical residue. Food not cleared for consumption. The problem wasn't an accident. It was cost-cutting. Cheap suppliers. No oversight. When something went wrong, it got covered. The response from the prison came fast and cold. Marcus was moved. Not punished. For his safety. A single cell. Limited contact. The food stayed the same. Men started refusing trays again, quietly this time. Commissary ran dry overnight. Fights broke out over sealed snacks. Officers tightened control. Tension crept back into every corner. Then inspectors were announced. Everything changed overnight. New deliveries. Real meat. Crisp vegetables. The kitchen gleamed. Tattoos flexed as men carried boxes under watchful eyes. The inspection tour lasted one afternoon. Photos were taken. Smiles exchanged. That night, dinner tasted better than it had in months. The next night, it didn't. As doors locked and trays slid in, the smell returned. Gray. Sour. Familiar. Marcus wasn't there to watch anymore. But everyone else was. Somewhere outside the walls, reports were being filed. Headlines were forming. Inside, men sat on their bunks, staring at their food, weighing hunger against fear. And when the lights went out, a quiet thought spread from cell to cell. If the truth is already out, why hasn't anything really changed? The first tray hit the floor before anyone said a word. It slid under the bars and stopped at the center of the tier, the gray scoop wobbling like it was alive. No one rushed to clean it up. The officers noticed, but they didn't push it. They had learned something too. When men stop eating, it means the problem is bigger than hunger. By morning, half the block had refused dinner. Medical logged complaints without names. Stomachs cramped. Heads throbbed. A few men chewed sealed crackers like they were gold. The rest drank water and waited. Waiting is something prison teaches well. Then came the calm. Administration announced a temporary menu change. For health reasons. Prepackaged meals arrived in brown plastic, stamped and sealed. Turkey slices. Rice. Applesauce. The block breathed again. Men ate slowly, testing each bite. No one got sick. Jokes returned. Weight stopped dropping. For a moment, it felt like the storm had passed. It hadn't. The calm made people careless. Kitchen workers noticed the old boxes creeping back in, stacked behind the new ones. Same suppliers. Same unlabeled crates. Same frozen meat ringing when it hit the table. The sealed meals were a cover, not a fix. A Canadian detainee named Jonah, his arms wrapped in thick geometric tattoos, worked sanitation near the kitchen. He saw what others couldn't. Barrels of cleaner stored inches from food prep. Spills wiped with the same rags used on trays. Meat thawed in standing water, then refrozen. When he spoke up, he was reassigned the next day. The sealed meals ran out faster than expected. Dinner reverted quietly. No announcement. No warning. Just the same old scoop, sliding back into place like it had never left. Men stared at it in disbelief. Some cursed. Some laughed. A few ate anyway. Hunger doesn't care about statements. That night, someone filmed it. Phones aren't supposed to exist inside, but they always do. A shaky video caught a tray, the color, the texture, the smell described in whispers. A tattooed hand poked the meat, and liquid seeped out. The clip ended fast. Too fast. But it was enough. The video made it out. Within days, a regional U.S. outlet ran a story. Then a Canadian blog. Then a UK human rights page shared it with a headline that spread faster than the facts. Families called again. Lawyers asked questions. Oversight demanded answers. Inside, the response was lockdown. No yard. No visits. Meals delivered cell by cell. The food stayed bad. Worse, even. Cold now. Rushed. Men banged doors. Officers barked orders. Tension tightened like wire. One afternoon, a unit counselor made rounds. He spoke softly, promised change, asked for patience. He avoided looking at the trays stacked on the carts behind him. Nobody believed him. Belief had spoiled along with the food. Then medical called an emergency. 2 inmates collapsed within minutes of each other. Different cells. Same symptoms. They were conscious, but barely. Stretcher wheels screamed against concrete. Radios filled the air. This time, the doors opened faster. Too fast. By evening, the warden's voice echoed through the block over the intercom. An external review is underway. The words sounded practiced. Safe. Empty. That night, Marcus's name came back into the block like a ghost. Someone said he'd been moved again. Someone else said he'd talked to federal investigators. No one knew for sure. What they didn't know was this. The truth was out, and the food was still poison. The next morning, inspectors returned without notice. Not the smiling ones. These moved fast. Gloves on. Clipboards out. They opened freezers. They took samples. They stopped carts mid-delivery. For the first time, officers looked nervous. Really nervous. The kitchen shut down by noon. Dinner didn't come at all. Men sat on their bunks in the dark, stomachs empty, tattoos stretching as they shifted and waited. Hunger gnawed, but fear held stronger. Because no food meant something big was happening. Something that couldn't be hidden anymore. And somewhere between the silence and the empty trays, a new thought settled in. If the kitchen is closed, what else are they about to uncover? The first night without dinner felt longer than any lockdown before it. The silence wasn't calm. It was tight. Men lay on their bunks listening to stomachs growl and vents hum, wondering which mattered more now. Hunger or the truth finally crawling into the light. When breakfast didn't come either, the answer started to form. By mid-morning, officers moved with purpose. Not rushed. Careful. The cart stayed parked. The kitchen doors were sealed. Word slipped through like smoke. Outside agencies were in the building. Not just inspectors, health officials, contract auditors, people who didn't wear the prison's colors, people who asked questions and waited for answers. The calmer moment came when bottled water arrived. Then boxed meals from a different supplier, stamped and sealed, handed out under watch. Men ate slowly, relief spreading with each bite that didn't burn or twist the gut. Some laughed, soft and tired. Others stayed quiet, eyes fixed on the ceiling, as if waiting for the catch. In prison, relief never comes free. In the kitchen, everything was being opened. Freezers pried wide, boxes split, dates checked against logs. A thick binder came out, delivery schedules, invoices, substitutions. The story started to show itself in numbers before it ever spoke in words. Cheaper cuts approved. Emergency substitutions made permanent. Rejected shipments rerouted instead of returned. When quality flags appeared, they were cleared with signatures that didn't match the names. A supervisor was pulled aside. Then another. Their answers sounded practiced until they didn't. The cleaner barrels came up. Storage came up. Temperature logs went missing. Someone said oversight. Someone else said budget pressure. No one said responsibility. Back on the tier, tension shifted. Men compared notes again, but now with facts. A guy from the UK remembered a case where prisons had quietly used institutional-grade meat not cleared for people. A Canadian detainee talked about penalties that never stuck because the contracts were layered through third parties. The same pattern, different place, same outcome. Marcus's absence weighed heavier now. A rumor spread that he'd given a statement. Another said he'd handed over names. A third claimed he'd been promised protection. The truth was simpler and more dangerous. Once the system starts writing itself down, it doesn't need a hero anymore. Paper does the damage. The boxed meals kept coming for a few days. Men gained color back in their faces. Sleep returned. The upswing felt earned, fragile but real. Officers relaxed. The block breathed. Someone even joked that the worst was over. Then the twist came quietly, as they always do. A memo went up. The kitchen would reopen under corrective measures. New procedures. Retraining. A temporary supervisor. The same contractor name sat at the bottom, unchanged. The same signature style. Men read it twice. Some 3 times. The message was clear enough without saying it out loud. The machine was going to keep running. Dinner that night came hot and looked better than before. Real steam. Color. A smell that made sense. People hesitated, then ate. No one got sick. The next night was the same. Relief grew. The story outside slowed. Attention drifted. Inside, trust tried to rebuild itself from scraps. In the kitchen, Jonah watched the deliveries. New labels, yes, but the same routes. The same drivers. Boxes stacked just out of sight of the main prep line. He noticed how the good stuff came out front when eyes were on them, and how the other boxes waited for later shifts. He noticed how logs were filled in before temperatures were taken. He noticed because he had learned what noticing cost. On the third reopen night, a tray came back half-eaten. Then another. A man complained of cramps. Medical logged it and moved on. By count, 2 more were bent over toilets. The pattern was faint, easy to dismiss. That was the point. The following morning, an email leaked outside. Not a video this time. A spreadsheet. Numbers lined up with symptoms. Dates matched menus. Costs dropped as complaints rose. A Canadian outlet ran it first, cautious but firm. A UK paper followed with context. Then a US station put a face to it. Family interviews, old footage, and a line that stuck. This didn't fail once. It failed on schedule. Inside, officers were briefed. Voices lowered. Routes changed. The boxed meals returned temporarily. Men stared at the plastic seals like they were life rafts. The calm returned, thinner now, stretched tight over anger that had learned patience. Late that night, doors locked and lights dimmed, a whisper moved cell to cell. A warrant had been signed. Not for the kitchen. For the contracts. The money. The trail that didn't live inside the walls. Hunger eased. Fear sharpened. Because when the problem isn't the food anymore, but the system that paid for it, the next thing to break isn't a tray. It's the people who thought no one would ever look closely enough to notice. The morning the arrests happened, chow still came on time. That was the strangest part. Sealed boxes again. Clean labels. Apples that snapped when bitten. On the surface, it looked like order had returned. Underneath, the place felt hollow, like everyone was waiting for a sound that hadn't reached them yet. It came through the radios first. Officers stopped mid-step. Conversations cut short. A few were pulled aside, faces tight, voices low. By noon, names were moving faster than food ever had. The food service administrator, a regional contractor manager, a logistics officer tied to purchasing. Not charged yet, but escorted out. Paper boxes replaced by evidence boxes. Computers shut down. Files copied. The trail had finally led somewhere solid. Inside the blocks, the reaction wasn't loud. No cheers. No celebration. Just a heavy exhale. Men sat on bunks with tattooed arms resting on knees, chewing carefully, like they still didn't trust the bite. Hunger had taught them patience. Poison had taught them memory. Marcus's name surfaced one last time. Confirmed now. He had spoken, not for revenge, not for attention, because he had wrapped bad food in plastic and waited long enough to prove a pattern. He was moved again, further out of sight, but safer than before. In prison, that counts as a win. The kitchen stayed closed longer this time. Meals came from outside vendors under supervision. Costs went up. Quality improved. Complaints dropped. On paper, the problem was solved. Outside, investigations rolled on across state lines, brushing against suppliers connected to other facilities in the U.S., then contracts touching Canada, then a parent company with ties reaching the UK. No headlines screamed anymore. Just steady reporting. The kind that doesn't go away. Inside, men didn't forget. They remembered the gray scoop, the wet bread, the nights of cramps and silence. They remembered how fast concern vanished when cameras left, and how quickly it returned when money trails appeared. They learned something simple and hard. Behind bars, food isn't just food. It's power. It's budget lines. It's what happens when no one thinks the people eating deserve better. Months later, new menus went up. Fresh paint covered old stains in the kitchen. Training photos lined the walls. Everything looked fixed. Still, some men kept sealed crackers under their bunks. Old habits die slow when they're learned the hard way. And when trays slid in each night, there was always a pause before the first bite. A look, a smell, a memory. Because once you've learned what inmates really eat behind bars when no one is watching, you never stop asking the same question. If this is what was allowed to happen in the dark, what else is still hidden in plain sight?